Movie starts in the medieval period. A princess woke up on top of a tower and found her hands tied. At that moment, she remembered being forced to drink something that made her sleep. She looked around and saw an open window, which led directly to the ocean. She then realized that the door was locked, but she immediately returned to bed when she heard someone approaching the room. A moment later, 2 soldiers entered the room and were tempted by the princess's presence. Thinking that she was still asleep, one of the men approached, but he suddenly grabbed her. After getting up from her bed, she broke her thumb to remove the shackle from one of her hands and slammed its chain into the soldier's face. The man responded violently, but she kicked him in the legs and tried everything to escape. When she caught up with him, he removed a hairpin and stabbed the man in the eye, then slammed his head against a post until he died. Another soldier cornered her, so he took the hairpin and stabbed her in the leg and arm. However, she picked him up, so he slammed the chain on her head. The man tried to strangle her with the chain, but the princess backed away and gave him a few blows before kicking him. When the tower was about to be released, hearing another soldier arrive, the princess hit him with a sledgehammer. Finally, she was able to untie her shackles and tidy up the room as if she was just sleeping, before finally escaping. Without making any noise, she reached a bathroom, and from the window, she saw her family tied up in the courtyard, and the entire castle occupied by invaders. It turns out that Julius was the one who did it all. The son of a diplomat who is obsessed with power. With the help of his loyal warrior and right-hand man Moira, he plans to seize the throne, but to legitimize his reign, he plans to marry the princess, who was supposed to walk down the aisle with him the other night, but the wedding didn't go through because she backed out at the last minute. The queen insists that they trust him, while her youngest daughter, Violet, tells Julius that he will never take her power. Julius insisted that he would get what he wanted, but Violet responded by spitting in his face. Moira used her whip near the princess's head, catching the man kneeling behind her. Moira ordered Violet not to be rude, before releasing the man. Julius blamed the king for his children's behavior, and accused him of breaking their tradition and welcoming outsiders instead of conquering them. Julius and his soldiers had already accompanied the royal family to the dungeon, while the princess watched them in the Maytori. She blamed herself, remembering that she was being forced to marry Julius to provide an heir to their kingdom. However, the princess was not happy, so she ran away before they could finish the ceremony. Moments later, a large soldier suddenly entered the room, so the princess sank into the bathtub to hide. From the small movements, she was able to create a few bubbles that caught the man's attention. Fortunately, he couldn't see her because of her helmet. After the giant soldier left, the princess got out of the water, tore off her soaking wet clothes, and then left the bathroom. She slowly walked down the hallway, avoiding the soldiers she could hear from afar. However, the soldier from earlier suddenly caught her and choked her. To get away, she rattled her helmet. This caused the giant to let go of her. Then she kicked him in both of his balls, but this also had no effect, much to her disappointment. With no other choice, she was forced to fight back, dodging his sword and kicking it out of his grasp. He grabbed her by the neck, so she threw her helmet against the wall to escape. Then the man rushed at her like a rabid animal, so he jumped over the wall and hit her on the shoulder, before twisting his helmet so that she couldn't see. The man tried to slam her into the wall, but the princess grabbed his helmet and stabbed him with its horns, before hitting him on the head. After the fight, he remembered his guru Lin, who had taught him that being a true warrior depends on what he is fighting for. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, another soldier found the fallen man. Upon seeing this, Julius immediately suspected that the princess had done it. Therefore, he ordered one of his men, Kerr to investigate. Instead of doing so, Kerr ordered another soldier to check on the princess. Meanwhile, the princess was hiding in the knitting room and tore her bridal gown to make it easier for her to move. A moment later, 2 soldiers suddenly arrived. Without hesitation, he stabbed one of the real investigators. Confronting the second soldier, the princess took a lace from her dress and used it to tie him to a pole. The princess then took a crossbow and ordered the man to find out what Julius had done to her family. When the man asked her if she knew how to use a crossbow, she turned and killed her companion. Despite this, the soldier continued to disobey the princess, so he shot an arrow above her head. To give her one last chance, the princess asked the soldier again, but he only shouted at her. So he released an arrow into her neck. After this, the princess took a sword and left the room. She went downstairs but saw some soldiers approaching, so she climbed to the window. While hanging over the ledge, she was forced to drop the heavy sword to avoid falling. When she climbed up, she saw the soldier sitting by the window. The soldier Kerr had commanded, and he looked exhausted from climbing the tower. Using the last of his strength, the princess hung on until the man got up, and then climbed back into the tower. While passing through a secret passage, the princess saw the dining hall full of soldiers stealing treasures. Since the men were drunk and busy, the princess secretly entered and managed to get past them, until she reached another secret passage. From there, she reached her room to retrieve a special sword. She remembered her training with Lin, who had encouraged her to focus and not surrender. At that moment, Kai, Lin's uncle and Harry's advisor, arrived to train her as well. To honor the princess as a warrior, Kai gave her a special sword, which was now in her hands. Determined to end it all, on her way out, she overheard Julius and Moira talking about the wedding preparations. During their conversation, Moira insisted that she take the throne, but Julius replied that no one would question her coronation if she did it according to tradition. The two then applauded. So the princess positioned herself to stab them against the wall. However, one of Julius's soldiers interrupted them, announcing that the king wanted to speak to them. Meanwhile, the exhausted soldier finally arrived at the room where the princess was supposed to be imprisoned. Extremely tired, he peeked into the room and saw someone in bed and a soldier guarding the princess. This convinced him that everything was fine, not knowing that the soldiers were dead, including one in the princess' bed. At the same time, Julius and Moira met with the king, who warned that forcibly ruin Julius's image among the people and would only lead to more bloodshed. Meanwhile, the princess crawled out of a vent and found herself under a knight's armor. Thinking it was just decoration, she continued to crawl out only for the knight to stab her in the clothes. The princess quickly kicked the knight. She quickly kicked her sword and dodged his attacks. Then she attacked the knight, but his body was covered in armor. However, the princess continued to attack until she stabbed him in the armpit, which revealed the weak points of the armor. Using this knowledge, the princess aimed her attacks at the weak points of the armor and then threw an oil lamp at him. The knight just laughed at her until the princess threw it at him. In the courtyard, the tired soldier assured Julius that the princess was still sleeping. However, the burning knight suddenly collapsed in the courtyard. Seeing this, Julius blamed Kerr and ordered him to deal with the situation. After Julius left, Kerr simply ordered his men to search the castle again. However, Moira stopped them and confirmed to the exhausted soldier that she had not seen the knight in their bodies. As she descended, Moira believed that they were facing someone who knew the ins and outs of the palace. Despite this, Kerr did not take her seriously and saw her as just a pawn for Julius. Because of this, Moira used her whip and plunged its blade into the throat of the talkative soldier. Terrified, the others rushed into the castle under her command. Seeing this, the princess hurriedly left. But she saw that they were coming. It was the soldiers everywhere. A moment later, 3 men managed to corner her. With no other choice, she faced them one by one. However, more soldiers were rushing up, so the princess removed her necklace and used its beads to slip on them. She stepped on their shields as she descended, and tied up the man who attacked her next, before throwing him down the tower. A moment later, the lower ones arrived, and one of her companions reminded her that they needed the princess alive, so they hesitated to attack. As the princess weakened from her wounds, the soldiers cornered her, so she threw herself over the ledge, and used the body of a soldier to cushion her fall. Another man jumped up to follow her, but she quickly blocked his attack and stabbed him in the leg. The princess then headed downstairs, only to see the exhausted soldier, but he didn't notice her. Eventually, she was surrounded by soldiers, so she jumped out of the window and grabbed a tapestry, before sliding into a room. Then she hid behind the curtains to treat her wounds. At that moment, the princess remembered not to worry the king and queen, discussing her marriage to give the kingdom in heir. The queen objected, but the king insisted that they had no son to inherit the throne. However, the princess insisted that she was not something to be sold lightly, but the king reminded her to do her duty. A moment later, the princess noticed someone entering the room. She immediately grabbed the visitor, only to find out that it was just a skunk. Seeing her wounded, Lin treated the princess and told her that the royal family was in the dungeon. To get there, they went to the kitchen but found it full of soldiers. Soon, the soldiers were summoned to help search for the princess, but some of them stayed behind to taste the female cook. Seeing this, Lin and the princess together freed the cook, and then faced the soldiers. While the princess fought off the 2 men, Lin easily knocked down the other one. Soon, the 3 of them were cornered, so the princess threw a hot soup at one of the soldiers, before confronting the other 2. After Lin knocked out her opponent, the 3rd soldier rushed at the princess. But Moira pulled him with her whip so that he could confront the princess himself. She scolded the girl for making such a mess and advised the soldiers. She scolded her to just follow, but the princess refused. Because of this, Moira used her whip on the 2, who immediately blocked them with their swords. Eventually, she caught Lin and threw her, so the princess helped her. However, Moira wrapped her whip around the princess's throat and hung her in the kitchen like a piece of meat. Lin was desperate to save the princess, but Moira stopped her. In the end, Lin managed to land a hit. Lin kicked the cook in the face, then threw oil into the stove, causing the entire kitchen to burn down and blocking Moira's path. Lin then ordered the princess to use the sewers to get to the dungeon, while she tried to stop Moira. Meanwhile, the princess crawled through the sewers and eventually reached the dungeon, where she found the guards drinking and oblivious to their surroundings. To get in, the princess did the unexpected, where she also pretended to be drunk. After that, she took down the guards one by one and barely made them break a sweat. Her father, who was locked up there with the Queen and Violet, couldn't believe what they were seeing. However, before they could leave, someone suddenly put the princess to sleep. When the princess woke up, she scolded her for being in the same room as Lin and her family. Julius scolded her for the trouble she had caused, but the princess only bit his hand. In retaliation, Julius slapped her. The princess threatened that if they were married, she would have to sleep with one eye open because he would try to kill her every day and night. Because of her stubbornness, Julius insisted that he would only marry Violet, and ordered Moira to kill the princess. Before she could do this, a soldier's sword was kicked at the princess, causing it to swing at Moira. While the princess fought back, Lin grabbed Violet and dragged her away. The soldier then threw the princess out of a window, causing her to fall from a high tower into the water. As the princess sank, she remembered her training and the times when her abilities and strength were questioned. Remembering Julius's plan to taste her younger brother, she woke up and remembered what she was fighting for. Using a broken piece of glass, she freed her hand from the binding and swam to the surface of the water. At the same time, Julius was preparing for his wedding, with Harry, the Queen, and other royal guests to witness their union. While his men searched for Violet, the princess returned to the castle but was confronted by a soldier. Fortunately, Violet pushed a statue over the man, and the princess was happy to be with Nailin again. After that, the three went to a barn where they armed themselves for the upcoming battle. Violet was amazed by the weapons, which inspired her to join the battle as well. Seeing herself, Violet would become her younger sister, the princess advised her to stay, and promised to train her after all. On the other hand, Julius, whose patience was running out, threatened the queen to call her youngest son or he would kill her. Outside, Lynn and the princess began to fight with the soldiers. Seeing more soldiers approaching, they hurriedly hid. Meanwhile, Violet secretly entered the church to free the prisoners, and gave Kai a sword. However, Julius noticed this and caught her. At that time, Lynn and the princess were seen fighting with the armored knights. Knowing the two's weakness, he targeted their wake points, as well as their eggs. Seeing Violet captured, they fought their way to the church, where Julius forced the priest to hasten his and Violet's marriage. Outside, the princess threw her sword at a soldier, allowing Lynn to enter the church. At that moment, Moira ordered her men to kill Lynn, while she left the church to confront the princess. Seeing the chaos, Kay told the guests to flee, causing the wedding to be postponed again. The princess and Moira clashed violently, while Lynn and Kay fought the soldiers. The princess dodged Moira's attacks, until the Amazon wrapped her whip around the princess's sword. Inside, the king attempted to attack Julius, but failed and was wounded instead. As she recovered, her crown fell off, but Lynn attacked Julius before he could retrieve it. Meanwhile, Moira managed to push the princess back and grab her sword. Despite this, the princess still rushed forward and landed a few blows before wrapping Moira's whip around her neck. She then used the whip's blade to stab Moira, before hanging her to permanently end her life. Meanwhile, more soldiers attacked Lynn, allowing Julius to stab her. The princess rushed in and couldn't help but cry when she saw her teacher fall. After that, Julius took the crown and placed it on her head. A few moments later, the princess faced Julius, while his family watched nervously from the side. Before starting, Julius told the story of how his parents cried when the princess was born because she wasn't a boy. As their duel began, the two parried each other's attacks, but unfortunately Julius managed to stab the princess in the side. Wounded, the princess staggered away, but Julius attacked her again. While the people watched, Julius pushed her into the courtyard to present the wounded and poor princess kneeling before the new king. As Julius declared his power to everyone, Lynn remembered his advice to gather his patience and focus. When Julius turned around, the princess quickly grabbed the sword and cut off his head. Julius's head fell to the ground and with it the king's crown. In the end, the princess took the crown and returned it to her father. Seeing his son's strength, the king ordered the people to ring the bell until midnight because the heir to the kingdom had been born. To everyone's surprise, the princess knelt before the king, who finally officially knighted her in front of her people. The king then declared that the princess would determine their fate and would be the future leader of the kingdom. As the people cheered, the princess rushed to Lynn, happy to see her alive. Meanwhile, the tired and fat soldier finally reaches the courtyard, unaware of what is happening. He shouts with joy when he finally finds the princess. And here the film ends. Thank you for reaching this part of the video. If you like it, please subscribe and hit notification bell. Until next time, see ya.